We've talked about the rise of the MCU, and we've talked about the crowning achievement of the MCU, but where does it go from here? This is I Have No Title and I Must Podcast, the show we're discussing in all aspects of pop culture. We are your hosts, Tyler
and Chris.
And so, yeah, a lot of people are starting to say comic book fatigue now, or just crappy movie fatigue, but...
Now, we have talked about how much... Have we talked about how much we hate that term, comic book movie fatigue? Because I hate it.
I think we've mentioned it several times. I don't think we've dove into it.
Because it's a good opportunity to say it's what the media says, and I'm not one of these people that says media is the enemy of the people, but they do say stupid things sometimes. If we really had comic book movie fatigue, we wouldn't be getting 4 or 5 of them a year for the last 20 years. And yeah, I'm not talking just Marvel. There's Fox, Sony, Warner Brothers has DC, and they almost exclusively release just DC films. And there's also the ones you don't think about, like Ghost World and stuff like Push.
Yeah, there's been a Hellboy.
Yeah, there's going to be was there just a Hellboy? Because I feel like I missed... There's either one coming out or just came out.
There's one that came out a few years ago that was not great. A lot of studio interference. Mm-hmm. A lot of studio interference. It had all the potential to be good. I was so disappointed. Big Hellboy fan, but... And
that was that David Harbour?
Yeah.
Okay, and then this new one is going to be another reboot, because it was a reboot. They never got to make the Hellboy 3 with...
Del Toro, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was a reboot, and there's going to be another reboot coming?
Yeah.
I didn't miss it.
I don't think it's out yet.
Okay.
If I missed that, someone correct me.
Yeah, or we can just claim that we recorded this in July.
Yeah.
Or whenever it was that movie hadn't come out yet. 2023. Definitely didn't come out.
For me, I don't think it's so much comic book fatigue, because some of the stuff Marvel's putting out is still pretty good. I like the Guardians. I know a lot of people complained about Doctor Strange. I thought it was all right. I mean, nothing to get that much in arms about, but some of the other stuff, to me, I think it's more... the powers that be are kind of resting on their laurels, because they did come off of just this big hype of like Endgame and Infinity War. But if they wanted to introduce these new characters, to me, I feel like you should just come out swinging, because these aren't the well-known characters. These aren't the popular characters. So you need something big to get everyone invested. And I feel like they just put out subpar stuff.
Yeah, so there was a lot that we had to gloss over and not mention anything about. With the phases, there was the Infinity War, and that was clearly built up to. Not every entry building up to it was totally about that, but it didn't feel like you missed anything when it came to it, other than maybe a little bit more Thanos before we got into that. I could have stood for him being like either a major part in one of the movies before Infinity War, or instead of just like whispers in the background, or maybe even like a little one-shot 30-minute, 20-minute thing before that. Just ideas. But post this, they really wanted to go into TV stuff, and I'm not going to say that was a mistake, because like looking at the Infinity Saga, going into a Secret Wars or Battle World or whatever they end up doing, I feel like some of these stories are too big for 2 or 3 2-hour movies. I don't even think it's going to be that. And that's why it's like when you get to that movie, it's like you've had a Shang-Chi movie. They had the rings in it, you know? And then we had a Doctor Strange movie. Remember, we talked about the multiverse. Remember at the end when all those people were going to come through and there was 3 Spider-Man? That was crazy. They're building on things that, hoping that like all the different movies that have come before them, they can use that to their advantage. And then after the fact say like, see, multiverse. Without really, and with this one, I got to say, they were doing the thing with Kang that they didn't do with Thanos. Having him in movies, building his character, and TV, like with Loki, in a big way. If this had worked, I feel like it would have paid off immensely. But with there was too many entries. Like Moon Knight, which I liked, has nothing to do with any of this. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like the Werewolf by Night entry was a really great, like, we're giving you this special thing just for around Halloween, and it has nothing to do with anything except later we might do Monster Team Up or something crazy.
I'm still hoping for the Howling Commandos.
I think we're going to get that, or something akin to it, like Midnight Sun. So a lot of people are talking about like a Ghost Rider, Werewolf, other people team up. With this, they knew they had to do something big after Endgame especially, but it felt like, and I knew they wanted to do the multiverse, but there were certain things like WandaVision led into Loki in a way, and then led into Spider-Man, which is building into the multiverse, and Loki in a major way too, and then Doctor Strange. These were supposed to domino into each other and build a bigger picture, but they were doing it so slowly. And then here's the thing where I think they've really screwed up, and this is in the present, and I think they are looking to rectify these things now. They have been reactionary, and this is, I think, their biggest fault. Making bad films and bad shows, whichever ones you think those might be, and rushing VFX people and putting them under the crunch. These are all bad business practices. Yeah. But I think the worst thing that they can do, and I don't know if it's Feige or somebody whispering into his ear or them just like not knowing what to do, especially after the virus, especially after our real world endgame where we shut down everything for a while and they lost momentum because of that, is Agatha Harkness. This is one of those things like, I'm going to watch it and I think it actually looks good. I think it's a good idea that they're doing a sequel to WandaVision, but was this something that if it was unveiled like 4 years ago, like what's coming down the slate? We're gonna do another Doctor Strange movie. We got Black Panther on the way. Oh yeah, everybody loves a Black Panther movie. And we're gonna have something Iron Man-ish. Maybe Don Cheadle, the Armor Wars, maybe a bunch of stuff that has to do with Iron Man legacy stuff. And Agatha Harkness. Agatha who the excuse me now? What the are you saying? Agatha, what the Well, we're going to put out this show called WandaVision. It's going to be about Wanda and the Vision, and it's going to have this other character in it, Agatha Harkness, and then we're going to do a show just about her. What? Yeah. It is so like WandaVision was so popular because it was good. Mm-hmm. And also there was nothing else on at the time. It was literally, there was very few new things, so it funneled a lot of people into this. But it was so weird and Lynchian. Specifically Lynch. I refer to a lot of stuff as Lynchian that isn't really. If it's weird, I'm like, oh, cool, it's weird. It's Lynchian. That's not really it. It's specifically like classic Americana that is also extremely surreal. And that is something they really captured, like, especially in 70 years of television. Yeah. Different slices of that. And it was so well constructed and thought out that I'm really hoping this Agatha Harkness thing is good, but that is the thing they learned from it. They finally did a Loki thing. Loki being extremely popular with the ladies, but also an extremely popular character for all time. Mm-hmm. I mean, did you ever know somebody who nicknamed themselves Loki?
Or like a bunch of pets being called Loki, mm-hmm. and surprised we don't have a bunch of kids running around named Loki. I'm
certain that if we looked it up, there are somewhere. I know there's at least a few Thors and at least one Thanos. It's in the books somewhere. Look it up. So they've been extremely reactionary, and it's like, well, this was extremely popular. Let's get a writer on this, and let's get that in the works and sign her up for her own show. Now they finally did this with Loki, but it felt like a natural progression. We killed him in the movies. Let's do something with a variant that didn't go quite the same way, since they actually did that in Endgame, or mm-hmm. whichever one it was where they did the heist, and they were getting the stones back, and it's like this one disappeared, creating a branching timeline, and he wasn't supposed to do that. So it felt like, there you go, there's your in for his own story, which was going to go into the multiverse saga. I don't think that was a bad idea. No. I don't even think it was too late. It was probably just the right time for it. If they had introduced a Loki movie in the middle of Phase 3, it might have seemed a bit much, like it's taking away from other actual main characters. So, and he hadn't really earned being a good guy yet. So that's, I think, their main issue. This bringing Robert Downey Jr. back, I don't think is, a lot of people are saying, like, are they out of ideas? Is this, he's not, yes, he is playing a version of Doctor Doom. First of all, we should speculate slightly on, is this a variant of Doom, or is this a variant of Tony?
That's a good question.
Because that could make a huge difference. And also, if anybody's listening And you actually are thinking, like, this was a bad idea, this was reactionary. Yeah, of course it was reactionary. Like, they needed to do something big. They needed to have a huge announcement. And bringing Robert Downey Jr. back, the face of the MCU.
And the Russos.
Yes, that is actually more important to me, because they can make a good movie without Robert Downey Jr. So with him, even better. I think I've said before, I think Robert Downey Jr. is a really great actor. He is not going... Either way, I don't think he is going to be playing Tony Stark. The way that we knew Tony Stark. Even if it is a variant of Tony who has become a Doom-type character. Or if it is Victor Von Doom, who looks like Anthony Stark. Whichever way this goes... He's not from the MCU's main timeline. It's not going to be him. It's going to be... It is a variant. If we have a Doctor Doom on our main timeline right now, maybe we don't even. Like the X-Men. And whatever happens after the Secret Wars thing where some multiverse people get, like, folded in from other universes... Like, we might get a Miles Morales from another universe. Like, that's what happened in the comic book storyline. Now he is in the main timeline, the same as Peter Parker. They don't just have to jump realities to meet each other. They can just go up a few streets. I think this Doctor Doom is going to get killed by the end of it. And they're going to use this storyline of that he is either a variant of Tony or looks like Tony to their advantage. So it's going to be a unique circumstance as a variant. Of one or the other. And it's also not the real Doctor Doom. This is going to set up Doctor Doom for later. This is probably a 1 or 2 movies feature at the most. Whoever they get to be our real Doctor Doom for later, who knows who that'll be. I think Mads Mikkelsen might still be in the running, and I think that's a good choice. He was already somebody else too, for sure.
Yeah.
You ever seen 2 people that just happen to look alike? Look on Fox News. I promise you will not be able to tell those blonde women apart. Or maybe it's just one woman. Who knows?
But yeah, I think if we didn't have Robert Downey, I think Mads Mikkelsen would have been the perfect Doctor Doom. That's another thing. What do you think about the choices for the Fantastic Four?
I've seen some footage. Like, I don't know if it's on purpose leaks, like what James Gunn's been doing with Superman, but I've seen them playing around with Ben Grimm, and he's going to be a practical Ben Grimm, probably with a little bit of CGI help, some overtones, but it looks like right off the comic book page, which has always been possible with a practical suit. Just make a suit that looks like it looks like on the page. I love Michael Chiklis. I think he played the characters so well. They really nailed that. The other characters, I think the Invisible Woman left a lot to be desired, and Reed was a little cheesy at times. Those are just Fox movies. That's just what you're gonna get. I think they got, like, Johnny was cheesy too, but, like, in the kind of way that you would expect them to.
Yeah, he always kind of was in the comics too.
Yeah, like way over the top, like, I'm gonna do motocross because I'm famous, because that's part of their thing is they are actually famous and not secret identity to people. I think this looks really good. I think I would not have done Pedro Pascal. I could almost see Pedro Pascal being Doctor Doom over Reed Richards. I think that's a weird option.
Yeah, I think that's the thing to point out too. We love Pedro.
Yeah,
he is a phenomenal actor. I definitely want him in the MCU, but I don't know about this role.
Yeah, that's my only thing. Is like the only thing I have, like, just shave your mustache. He can play anything.
Yeah,
and I think he's proven that by playing anything at this point. Like, you don't know how long this guy's been acting until you're like, what, 2014? No! He's been acting for 70 years. Yes, look it up. He has an amulet that has made him immortal. Go back and look it up. You think you know where his career started, but you don't. That's what they want you to think. So, I just don't think he was right for Mr. Fantastic. I think that's kind of a weird choice. He will probably prove me wrong. Like, I'll settle into it probably like 5 minutes into the movie, and it'll be great, because he literally can't do anything. Having said that, on paper, I would have gone for Doctor Doom or some other Doctor Doom variant, but I think he deserves to have a bigger role. He's proven himself. He's such a beloved character actor that why not choose him for something bigger and long-lasting, something that's going to weave in and out for a while. And the other thing is, there's a lot of actors out there that take themselves way too seriously. Like, there's some like cancer doctor. You're not oncologists.
Yeah.
You are monkeys that dance to make people happy for a few minutes. 2 hours if you're lucky at a go.
It's like you get paid to play pretend. I'm not saying you're not good at it. I'm not saying I don't enjoy it and that I'm not going to give you my money, but let's be realistic.
This is for entertainment. Some of it, if you get lucky, is high art. Even then, that in itself is entertainment. You are contributing to the culture, but let's not get things mixed up. And none of us are getting out of this alive. It's not that important. So some actors, I'm not going to say they're bad people, but they're just like, no, I'd never do comic book movies or whatever.
Like, why not do both? Why not do the comic book movie? Have fun. Get that paycheck. Then go do the art house indie movie.
Yeah. Or fund probably each and every one of them have a script that like is their dream thing that they want to get made. And
it's like, yeah, use your comic book money to fund your movie.
Go do that.
Can you tell me that one paycheck from a Marvel movie wouldn't fund your entire indie movie?
They've never been more popular than they are right now, even though we're experiencing comic book fatigue, I guess, until the next really good one. And then it's they don't mention that for some reason, and we can't have an intelligent conversation about how that's the stupidest concept ever. So this is like some people are above this, and that annoys me. But whatever, that they can be pretentious somewhere else. And then some people, like, they don't care. They love this sort of thing, and Pedro loves this sort of thing. Like, he doesn't mind being in, like weird vampire stuff, science fiction stuff, and now literally comic book stuff, which is also science fiction for the most part. It kind of encompasses all genres. And he doesn't take himself too seriously. And I respect that. Like, he knows what his job is. His job is to act and make people happy. And he loves doing it, apparently. And also apparently has some pretty severe anxiety. So whatever he needs to do to get himself through the day, I fully support. That's just a thing I read somewhere and saw a video of him possibly having a panic attack in the moment of like an event. And then one of his co-stars like holding his hand all of a sudden and him looking pretty rigid. So I'm just saying, like, I can identify with that.
Yeah, very much so.
I really like this guy on a real world level, but I also respect his practices of like, just because it can't be about the money. If it were about the money, I don't want to get into that because I don't know him. But Pedro, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on. Like, we can debate this. I would tell him to his face, like, honestly, on paper, I did not see you as Mr. Fantastic. I would have seen you more as Dr. Doom. And not because he has to wear the mask all the time. I would have paid to see a Books of Doom or whatever, like, prequel to all of this, but no mask. Yeah. No mask for the whole thing. And then you wear the thing. Or maybe you put on a new glass mask and we get to see your face. I'm not trying to cover up your face more like in the other show. Mandalorian. It's the Mandalorian. And we got back to Star Wars.
We haven't done that in a while.
No, it's actually been a bit. There's no Halloween themed Star Wars thing yet. So I think this thing with Robert Downey could really work.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just one of those, I have to wait and see. Because again, like you said, he is a great actor. I think he's definitely proven himself in these roles, but are they out of ideas? Is this what they're falling back on, or do they really have something planned?
Well, it does look like they're leaning toward villains, and for the time being, they're not really talking about the X-Men yet. I think they want to finish out whatever plans they have for right now before they start making huge announcements. But I heard there was a couple of rumors I heard from reliable sources online that a lot of people are talking about. A couple of things, one of which is that they, back in the summer, quietly fired a bunch of producers at Marvel that were, I don't want to get into political leanings or whatever, but some people might have been pushing certain ideas for one reason or another, and that's not necessarily making good art. That is just pushing for an idea. I think you can do both, but if it's not working, you need to just make something good. And the other one is, like, this Armor Wars thing is possibly being set to, I think it's done. I don't even know if there's post-production that needs to be done on it. From what I've heard, it's done, and it's been done for a while. It was announced a long time ago, and I think they filmed it, and I think it's set to be canceled or not really yet again. That would be the first thing that Marvel would have done that got made that isn't being released, or maybe they're gonna rework it from being a show to being I don't know. They could do what they did with Echo, just release it all in one day, and that way you mitigate any kind of bad reviews it might get, because all the bad reviews come all at once instead of over a 6-week period, which is most likely what would have happened with that. And we're getting Agatha Harkness for sure. It better be really good. Yeah. As you see what I'm saying, like you're keeping some Don Cheadle, and they had Blade in the works for years now and can't seem to get this off the ground. I'm like, you're literally called the House of Ideas. There's a really good idea. Make a Blade movie. And I don't know if they're canceling it or if they're parting ways with Mahershala. I wouldn't blame Mahershala for saying, like, if you're not going to make this movie, release me from my contract so that I can just focus on other things, because I'm having to keep plots of time free for this movie that isn't getting made. Do another one with Wesley Snipes. You have my blessing. Yeah. That would be huge.
And I'll throw it out for free, Marvel. A Blade-led Howling Commandos.
You really want to see this?
I seen it once in an episode of Spider-Man, and now I want to see it on the big screen.
Was that the Spectacular Spider-Man?
Maybe. I'm trying to remember which one it was. It's the one where there's like a lot of crossover with like some of the like Iron Fist and...
Yeah. I remember. So I think that they're going through a transitionary period right now. Easily, clearly. Is it good? I reserve honestly, this year, like, Deadpool was Deadpool. I enjoyed it for what it was. A bunch of mindless violence with non-stop quips from Ryan Reynolds. If you like that one movie where he played a waiter, probably like him in everything he's in, because that's what he's like all the time. Except this one has like a lot of, killing people. And there's that one scene with Johnny Storm, and I won't go into that. Look it up on something, because it's worth the price of admission alone. So what we got, the third Guardians. I loved that. I thought it was so good, and that was maybe our goodbye to James Gunn. The Russos are coming back. They needed them, and I don't know what kind of money they had to give them to come back, but it will be worth it. Even if the movies don't make the same kind of money that Infinity War and Endgame were making, they need to make better films. Yeah. I loved Ragnarok. I could not have loved that movie more, and it's something you can't put your finger on. It's one of those lightning in a bottle. Like, if you'd said, we're gonna make a Thor Hulk like buddy movie, I would have said, like, Hulk is not my favorite character. And especially if you'd said it's going to be Ruffalo for some of it at least, that would have seemed weird to me. But they made it work. That same movie, and I think when people talk about how much they hate Love and Thunder, they forget it's the exact same people who made the previous one. And then, because they went from loving Ragnarok to then after the next movie saying, like, Taika Waititi needs to bleep all that, but they said that verbatim. Like, he needs to just not make these movies anymore. He needs to just do something else. Okay, well, he made Ragnarok, and I remember reviews for that being great. I remember it making a ton of money, and I remember nobody having a negative word to say about it.
Honestly, I think Taika's hands might have been tied a little bit in this.
In the next one?
Or like in like Love and Thunder.
Love and Thunder? I can easily see it. It felt muddled. Story aspects, like the story with Jane getting cancer in the comics, are so... It was so drawn out. Like, there was a time where they played up the mystery of who is this new Thor, who is wielding Mjolnir, that is this woman. And Jane was one of the possible suspects. But because she, at the time in the comics, had cancer and was lying in a hospital bed, it seemed unlikely. And they built it up to be this thing like, if you become Thor one more time, you undo all of your progress you made with your chemo, and then you basically sacrifice yourself to do this heroic thing. And that's, from memory, where they went with that. It's been a long time since I looked into that story. So to do that in one movie, to have the whole story, we hadn't even had Jane in anything in years, and then we have the whole story in this, and they they made a joke of it. Like,
Yeah.
it could have been a high drama. I think where they went with Ragnarok, they learned the wrong lesson, which is to just make a straight comedy. They could have, and they could have went with other things. They could have
Yeah,
done a
I think
different
that would have been
storyline.
the better choice. If they were going to make it a straight comedy, definitely different storyline.
But, I mean, from the scene where she's reaching up and, like, tapping on her chemo to make it drip faster and looks immaculate, you know, they don't even go out of their way to make Natalie Portman look like she's even got a cold at all, when she's literally, like, trying to suck down a bunch of chemo so she can go be Thor somewhere. I had issues with that movie as well. Now, there were parts of it that I really liked, and there was some good music in it. Maybe too much Guns N' Roses. I felt like if they were gonna do a Guns N' Roses theme and use more than one, they should have just gone all in and said, we're just gonna do a greatest hits Guns N' Roses, or deep cuts too, and do a solid Guns N' Roses soundtrack like Highlander did with Queen.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, they trod this line where they didn't fully commit to that.
Honestly, that's going back to the reboot of Hellboy. That's kind of how it was there. It's like so many tonal shifts.
That
It's
last one that was weird. That had
Yeah.
the Muse song in it.
Yeah.
It had, I think, Psycho, which seemed to come out of nowhere.
and that's kind of how it was with this. There's so many tonal shifts. It's like the movie didn't know what it wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it's probably because there's too many hands in the pot.
Because Christian Bale was like, he was so good in this.
Yeah.
And he does what he always does, which is like, figures out how he wants to play a character and then goes too far and fully commits. I don't know if he's straight up method. This information is probably readily available out there somewhere. I don't know that he is that, but he feels like it because he goes all in.
Write that down for a future episode for method acting.
Okay.
So I think people, because of Jared Leto, people misunderstand what method acting is.
Oh, it's not where you're just an asshole all the time?
Yeah.
And it's an excuse to be an asshole.
So
Guess what? I'm going to start method acting at work because apparently everybody I work with is method acting. That's a true story. Anyway, yeah, they learned this is an example of where they learned the wrong lesson from something. And I think you're right in that there was interference, and I don't know that has really been a bad thing with Marvel because it's more of a collaborative effort generally, and like Feige's in on these meetings and people are talking and they're brainstorming with, I think, if the bad thing finally happened, which is what has happened to so many potentially good films, or at least a potentially okay film that turned it into a slop, is with Love and Thunder. Mm-hmm. Which had like a lot of good ideas, but fell down with them. The main one I think they up on is having the Jane Foster story take place in one movie.
Yeah.
We cannot like the storyline. Yes, she's been around since the very beginning of the MCU, but not having had cancer and like turning that into a joke. I'm not saying that they couldn't have done it in a lighthearted way. I'm saying what they did do was bad. And everyone agrees. So that can't be a hot take.
I think maybe kept the mystery of who it was in this movie, and then next movie be a little bit more serious and focus on.
Yeah, and they could have had it be that it feels like a huge red herring, and maybe even that they're gonna, because they've done this before, they're maybe gonna have Shia LaBeouf be the Silver Surfer in a future Silver Surfer movie or Fantastic Four. They might have hinted that they're going to have somebody else another character be the female Thor, and have Natalie Portman's character, Jane Foster, be sick through this whole first movie and make people really think it's not her. Then in the second one, when it's revealed it was her, and you can even go back and show some flashbacks where there were hints that it might have been. Make that work. But I think that they have learned from their mistakes, and I think they're trying to right their wrongs, which is, it might kind of suck for a bit because they are going through this transitional period. And clearly, like, they put off, they're releasing Agatha Harkness because they wanted to release one more thing for their television lineup, and they wanted to have something for the Halloween season, which I think that's what that's going to serve as, like Werewolf by Night did. God, was that 2 years ago. And they would have spent the rest of the year. They would have spent most of this year. What came out this year? Deadpool. And Deadpool really doesn't even feel like an MCU movie. It feels more like an epilogue to Fox, the Fox universe. Honest to God, I can't remember what came out earlier this year. So I definitely feel like there are plans for making things better. Oh, that's right. I forgot. The Marvels.
Yeah.
And when did Guardians come out? The last Guardians?
Yeah, it came out this year too, didn't it? Or was it at the... No, it was last year. I don't remember now.
There's not date. I'm looking at this list where there's no dates. I think you're right, though. I think it was last year. Right?
Yeah, because we did our James Gunn episode. So, yeah, it was last year.
Okay. But the Marvels was this year. And I got to tell you, I talked about this already. I didn't hate that movie, but I could see how it's not for everyone. So it's not like a mainstream thing. When you make something, this is just, like if you make a boxing movie and it does not pass the Bechdel test, or you've literally forgotten to cast any female roles in it because it just doesn't play into the story. Like if it's about the insider world of boxing and it's this hyper masculine thing, you're just not gonna have a lot of women maybe like in that. Or I'm saying you could write a story that would turn out that way. And I could see Joe Rogan like having this in his desk right now, like UFC. And like they're like, should we have a woman in this? And they're like, oh yeah, get one who's going to carry around like the sign for the people. They walk around the thing and then they walk away. Are we giving her a speaking role? Why would we do that? The types of people who are going to go see that movie. You don't have to say it out loud. And if you make a movie that like 85% of the main characters are women, you're catering to women. And if this isn't their sort of thing, then you're dividing a lot of your fan base. And I'm not saying dividing them up. I'm just saying like the people who are going to want to go see that might be a bit more limited. And that's just the nature of people. Who are you making this for? I enjoyed the movie. I am somebody who I don't go see a movie because it's got somebody who looks like me in it.
Yeah.
Be it that it's a white person, be it that it's a male, be it that it's a nerd, be it that it's a short guy. That's not why I like Robert Downey Jr., because we are fellow short people and are forced to wear high-heeled shoes to fit in and blend and hope that nobody notices. No, I go to see what looks good. That's me. But I'm saying, like, over the swath of 8 million people, if you say, like, here's another Captain Marvel movie. It's got a bunch of characters you probably don't know and are not going to care about by the end of it. Then you have to make something really good to make them care about these characters. I felt like the movie was not bad. Did they do some goofy stuff in it that might have not been as, like the singing planet thing? I thought that was hilarious. But I could see how the same people who went to go see Iron Man and love Iron Man because of Iron Man might go, if they went to see this, they might be like, the did I pay money for? And you're not going to please everybody all of the time. I don't hate Brie Larson because she's a woman. I don't hate women because they're women. That's just me. But that's not everybody. Some people don't like these films. So you got to make a really good film that appeals, that has mass appeal. And that is apparently difficult to do at times. Iron Man was really good. A lot of people went to go see. See, and this is where some people might say, if I'm making a political argument, which I'm not, I'm making an in general argument about mass population. Something has to be this good, because like that's what the boxing movie I described is basically what Iron Man 1 was. Why would a woman ever go see that? Because it's a good movie. That's why. Because it's got actors and
that's kind of my point with all these. If you're going to introduce characters that aren't as popular, that most people are not going to know about, you have to come out swinging with them. Mm-hmm. You can't just throw out movies to have them out there.
Yeah, and that's why I think maybe an Avengers movie or a Secret Wars or something that has just a ton of characters in it, and let them be badass in it for a bit so that people can identify with this. I mean, like, how many people do you know that like absolutely love Rocket Raccoon? And how many people knew who Rocket Raccoon was before like 2016 or whatever it was, 2014? Nobody, but now people are wearing Rocket and Groot shirts that I saw one the other day and I was like, I would not have expected this person that I'm looking at to be wearing a Rocket t-shirt. But people loved him because, like, they just let his character shine and they let him be multifaceted too, because James Gunn wrote a good film. The same with the other Guardians. Nobody knew who these were, and now they're mainstream characters. Yeah. They could have done this with the other Captain Marvel. I think Spectrum is maybe what they're going with. I think that was one of her names that before she was Captain Marvel or after. That it just bugs me that it wasn't. And Iman Vellani, I love Iman Vellani as Ms. Marvel or whatever it is that they're going with for her. I liked the show. I didn't plan on watching it. This was another one that I was like, I don't know if this is for me. I watched it and I was like, I get this. This is for the people, like kids that love comic book stuff that are wanting to get into it, and our teenagers themselves. Now they get, this is like another Spider-Man. Spider-Man being in high school. That high schoolers can look at this and be like, that's me.
Yeah.
That I feel like that. That's what I feel like. And when she gets on the bus and like loses grip on her bike and her bike like slips out of the bus and she's like, can you just let me get my bike? And the guy's like, nope. And he drives off and she just loses her bike. That's a real thing that has happened to people that they can identify with. This is like day to day. I have trouble with my parents. My parents don't get me. I love them and I do anything for them. And I know that they feel the same about me, but we don't connect for some reason. And sometimes it can be as simple as that. Sometimes it doesn't have to be like a broken home or your dad was a mad genius that just ignored you his whole life. Sometimes it can just be like, I love my family, but they don't understand me and I am the black sheep. And there's a million kids that feel that way. And Iman Vellani portrayed that in such a positive way. And I love that. And I would want to see more from that character because I think it's good. And I think little girls need good role models too. Boys need role models worse. Don't get me wrong. They need good role models worse. They have a ton of them, but most of them are bad. So we need good ones. But girls need them too. And we forget that. Like, how many dads out there, hypermasculine dudes that have little girls as daughters? You think they don't need somebody that they can look up to? They do. And that's why we need better movies for that, better media for that, better books, better comic books, better everything. So where is the MCU going from here? I hope in a better direction. Yeah. And the Robert Downey Jr. thing, I don't think sends the signal of we're out of ideas, because they were always going to plan for him to come back at some point. I think that whether it be an AI hologram or to be a real character, like its own character.
Or different multiverse version of Tony. Yeah,
and I think that because of this, I don't even necessarily think it's out of the question that we'll see another version of him playing an Iron Man or another version of Tony Stark, or possibly even a flashback of him being the Tony Stark that we saw, that was our Tony Stark from some point in his history.
I think the bigger gamble, or one of the bigger gambles, I should say, is having Harrison Ford come in to play General Ross.
Because he's 150 years old? Get somebody younger who looks old.
Yeah, because one, they've already cast Ross. He's been in other movies. Why not keep the same actor? And two, Harrison Ford, how many times do you want to get him to come back?
That's true.
Versus how much you're going to have to pay him to come back.
Yeah, and I've heard that they're making plans to do other things with the Red Hulk.
Yeah.
So that seems odd to me that they would do that. It's like, they're like, what? People don't die, right? People who habitually get into plane crashes from planes they fly themselves are immortal. They live forever. Yeah. I don't need to be maudlin about this.
Notably harp on their own movies.
Yeah, and hate to do... Like, I don't know. He seems to have turned over a new leaf with this, like, where he's, like, acting, like, stupid and giddy at the Comic-Con, and he's hulking out. And I'm like, this is a new Harrison Ford. I feel like he is either losing his marbles, or I don't know if he's got kids, if something just snapped inside of him and he's like, you know what, I just want to have fun. I read this, I don't know if this is true because I did not see video of it. When asked a question about Han Solo, I think it was like, what's Han Solo's favorite color or something, some glib, dumb question. He turned to the interviewer and said, I wish George Lucas would die. And now I'm sure that was meant to be funny, as if I were to say something like that. I say things like that all the time and I think they're funny in the moment, and then other people are like, are you being serious? I mean, kind of, but like, what do I wish he'd live forever? Which one would be equally worse? Anyway, he seems to be a different guy now. Having said that, is he in his 80s?
Yeah.
And with that, you've reminded me, for some reason I've been bringing up Star Wars earlier. At the time of recording, James Earl Jones has only just died yesterday. And he was huge for the science fiction movement, giving the weight to the character of Darth Vader that he did, and being such a voice in this community. That's a huge loss. Having said that, if I'm not mistaken, he was 93 years old.
Yeah.
So he lived a good long life. I don't think, not to say that his friends and family should not mourn him, but I am saying as, like, rest well. That's all I will say. And that he was a literal titan in our community for nerds and science fiction. And it's such a, his power was in not only his ability to act, but his very unique voice. Mm-hmm. So he will be missed. Please, Kathleen Kennedy, handle the character of Darth Vader very carefully from here on. And I think there's some sort of explosion going on outside. I'm not sure what is happening, but I did want to mention that at some point and nearly forgot to. So James Earl Jones is gone. And this is just to say, like, people don't last forever. And I don't want to be, I just said, I don't want to be maudlin about how we cast these things. And if he can, do it. But don't cast people like this in roles that are going to screw up your storytelling later on. If it's going to be like a really big role for one movie, and if you can do it, do it. If you've kept yourself physically fit and your health is really good, I'm not saying don't do it. But I'm like, how many films they had planned for this 80-year-old man who habitually crashes planes?
That and the Red Hulk's kind of a bigger character now.
Yeah,
so
like a long-standing thing that, like, General Ross is like one of those C-list characters in the comic books that, like, every comic book fan knows. Mainline people might not know, but it's like Maria Hill, like Nick Fury's right-hand man. Big in the comic books, like, important character. Thunderbolt Ross, important character in the comic books.
Has his own group of so-called heroes.
Yes,
the Thunderbolts.
Coming up. That's another thing we didn't get to. There's a lot of speculation. They keep pushing stuff forward on the plate, taking stuff away on the plate, and pushing other stuff forward. We don't really know. X-Men looms large on the horizon.
Yeah, that's another debate going on, how to incorporate the X-Men.
I think what they're going to do at this point is going to be with the Secret Wars storyline, the more recent one from about 10 years ago or so, where they did Battle World. I think the multiverse is going to collapse, and Doom is going to be in control of what is left. It's going to be kind of like, it might even be the place that they go in Loki and Deadpool with the Alioth. What is that place called? We should rename the podcast to vaguely remembered half things from comic book movies. The Void, maybe? I don't know. Anyway, it might be that. That is because there's already like a Deadpool core there, and there's like the in the comic it was the Thor core. What it comes down to is this mental battle between like Dr. Doom and Reed Richards, and Jonathan Hickman wrote this. They built it up so well. It's really intense. It's really epic, and there's a lot of main characters that are left. Very few, but like. Your really interesting choices, I felt like. I don't want to go over that whole thing. That is where and then once they reset the universe, there wasn't there wasn't a mainline 616 comic book universe and the Ultimates comic book universe. They ended all the Ultimate titles and folded those characters over into the regular 616 MCU comic book universe, like Miles Morales being the main one. If I remember correctly, Old Man Logan from the Old Man Logan, What If universe, that wherever storyline that was from, its own thing, really. But they plucked that character, and I'm pretty sure they put him in the main universe. And I think they left our regular Wolverine dead for a while at some point after that, and let Laura Kinney be the main Wolverine. they eventually brought our regular Wolverine back, and so they're both Wolverines. This is, I think, something that they could do, and instead of just folding in what few ultimate characters in, they'll fold in a universe that had a version of the X-Men into our universe, and not just pretend that we ignored this issue for so long.
I heard speculation that maybe they could do a House of M, since they already have Wanda there, and that could be where the X-Men come in, because the mutants get reawakened with their powers.
I wouldn't mind that storyline if it didn't exclude a Magneto that existed in the Holocaust, which it almost certainly would. If it's like now mutants' powers get turned on, if they handled it well, and that could even be its own thing, I don't know. I love that storyline too. I would love to see some version of that take place.
And another point of contention I hear people debating on is, should they introduce the X-Men as kids, like how they were when they were first introduced in the 60s, or do we bring them in as fully fledged adults that know what they're doing?
I think they should do... I didn't love this show, but I think they should maybe do a version of it, which is X-Men Evolution. I think maybe that's the best of both worlds. You've got some adults, and you got to choose them very carefully, because this is where we'll be going forward from here. And then have some be like teenagers. Not like 20s, but like teenagers, so that they can grow into these roles. Which is, I think, kind of what they were trying to do with Apocalypse. When Apocalypse came out, it just wasn't handled well, and it already had like so many movies behind it.
Yeah, I think with that one, it's more like, hey, we're about to lose our rights to this. Let's just go ahead and get as much money out of it as we can.
We need to keep making as many of these as we can for a while we can. So I think it's got to have something to do with the Secret Wars coming up, because they're going to want to start doing X-Men as soon as possible. So that is a major possibility. And right after that, it's almost got to be AVX, Avengers versus X-Men. I don't know what the point of contention will be that will cause them to have this, other than if it's just kind of a bit of a retread of the very first X-Men movie ever. From 2000, which is just senatorial debates about, are mutants real? Yes, they're real, and we need to control them. And there's about to be a second Holocaust of mutants, or at least maybe not a full-on Holocaust like what Magneto witnessed, which is what he thinks is coming, but maybe more so what happened to the Japanese here in America, which is we put them in internment camps, nowhere near what was going on in Germany, but it starts the same.
Yeah.
It did not end the same, but that is a point of our history that nobody likes talking about, and everyone is keen to forget if they even know about it. So I think that might be a good starting point from a story aspect to bring the Avengers or borderline government agents. They keep trying to bring them in and say, like, you're G-men, you're our men in black, except brightly colored suits. And they're like, we got to be free agents. That's what Captain America always argued for, was being a free agent and saying, I just have to do what's right in the moment, and I can't wait for orders. So I think that's going to be, I don't know for sure. Also, I just want to say, Channing Tatum, one way or another, his head is too big. Like, good actor, bad actor, I don't care. He's a nice guy, extremely nice. He helped Stanley off the stage, but his head's too big. His head's too big for Gambit. Gambit's like this lithe, limber, ultra, like, thin, like the only way he looks like a big imposing character is because he wears a trench coat. Like, they literally, he wears just a regular brown trench coat. It's not slimming. He's just so thin as a character. And then they bring in like this, like, he's not like a Dave Bautista big, but he's like, bulk. Yeah. He's like a broad guy. And his head he's big for Gambit. And I let him be somebody else.
Yeah. Honestly, I know the movie was terrible, but Taylor Kitsch playing Gambit and Wolverine wasn't a bad choice, I don't think.
You think from the actor's perspective.
Yeah, from the actor's
he's written badly and they portrayed him badly, but the actor might have done a good job if they had done it correctly.
So, I mean, he had the look, at least.
Yeah, and if they, imagine if they just had him in a comic, the same costume that Channing Tatum was in. 7 sizes smaller, obviously, to fit Taylor Kitsch, but that might be that. I actually think there's some validity to what you're saying. I think with so many of the characters they brought back, I think they should have had multiple versions of some of the characters on screen. Like I think they should have maybe tried to get Liev Schreiber to have two saber-tooth teeth. And they could have had two Gambits, like one that's like super comic book accurate and one that's Taylor Kitsch, and let him redeem himself because people hated that. Me being one of them, when I was kind of cautiously optimistic about what this movie's going to be. And I mean, that first Wolverine movie was so bad, especially the stuff with it was like the people who were making this hated the character of Gambit and were forced to use him, so we're just gonna make him suck all the way through.
Honestly, it felt more like they hated the comic book fans.
Yeah, and just
it's like, hey, you know all these characters you love, you.
And so many. I don't want to get into talking about that specific Wolverine movie too much. But
that's a different story.
Yeah, I have no idea what they're going to do with the X-Men. That is, they have to dispense with this multiverse saga, which culminates in Secret Wars. I did see the one comment I saw was, before I came in, I was actually watching something slightly unrelated but tangentially related. Ryan Airy from Screen Crush was predicting how he thinks they're going to handle Doctor Doom and go into some other stuff. And the only comment that I saw scrolling down was that I hope we get to see Doctor Doom, this version of Doctor Doom, or some version of Doctor Doom, dispensing with the Council of Kangs, showing how powerful he actually is, and also as a plot point, not completely ignoring that they'd spent years, literally years, building this Kang character, and now we're just gonna ignore it with one. Hopefully they don't do this, but if it all just ended with Owen Wilson saying like, yeah, we had some problems with 616 adjacent Kang, but it got taken care of. If that's the last we hear about Kang, that's going to be extremely disappointing with how much they really built this character up, especially with the end of the Ant-Man movie with the Council of Kangs. That was going to be huge.
I mean, they could easily kind of just bring in someone else from a different universe, be like, oh, but this one's worse.
Yeah, and there's also the possibility that they take this Doctor Doom, depending on if it's Victor or if it's Tony, because it could be a Tony that just is more like a Doctor Doom and maybe takes up the mantle of Doctor Doom, which would be kind of like a fake version of a Doctor Doom like in world. And when a real Victor Von Doom says like, that's actually my name, and is more powerful and is like extremely dangerous, comes into the picture, whoever that might be. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but I'm looking forward to it. I think good things are on the way. And I think the way that they pulled back on the releases from this year and got really secretive about a lot of things, it sucks the way things went down with the guy who played Kang. I should have my notes in front of me.
That's not how we do things here.
And it sucks because I don't want to pretend he doesn't exist. I think he did some really good acting in a lot of stuff, and I don't know where his career is going to go from here. But given that, I think that really gave them pause to say like, okay, this stuff isn't working. What can we do to remedy this? Where do we need to go from here? Like, people just aren't buying Ant-Man. Like, it seemed on paper, Ant-Man, world-renowned superhero. No, like, they needed to make better use of these characters. I don't think they necessarily should have been an Ant. And if they did, I think they needed to make them bigger and better each time. They added his daughter in. That was great. They can't get a stuntman to be in an Ant-Man suit for Hank Pym, like, and just have the guy voice. They can't do that. Like, seriously? He just walks around and, like, they had that one scene where he was really pretty badass, where he just brings in, like, this army of futuristic ants to, like, destroy that city. But they can't have him in a suit? They just, I know, like, that wouldn't have made the movie, like, $7 million more, and it wouldn't have made it a success. But this is what the thought process behind these things is what baffles me. And, you know, on paper, some of these things are a good idea. Like, kind of like Tron. Like, if you had one Tron movie set in the real world, and then you have one Tron movie set in the, you know, like, Matrix-y kind of world, then, like, in the computer, if you have an Ant-Man movie where they set up going inside of this like weird sub-microscopic universe, and then they do it. They go in there and everything is like weird and it's super science fiction-y and everything is CGI. It's got to feel more real than that. People have to be able to connect to it better. Either you have to have like better jokes, and I don't think it can all be on the day.
Yeah.
Like, I think there's a lot of movies that work if it's ad-libbed, and some movies don't. I think this is probably one that didn't. I didn't hate the movie, but it did have... I think it could have been a lot better. Now, expecting an Ant-Man movie, a character that nobody identifies with, because A, the character that is the main Ant-Man is not being used as Ant-Man.
Yeah.
It's the modern version that nobody knows. So even in comic book terms, they're not really getting it. Whatever. I like Paul Rudd. I wish these movies were better made. Again, as vehicles for him. Because he is an actor who doesn't take himself too... He understands what his role is as an actor. Just to make people happy. At least that's how he has taken his career in the direction of, is he wants to make people happy. He wants to make funny movies that lift your burden for a couple of hours. And that is what he has tried to do. And I'd like to see more from him. Not that we're not going to. It's not like his career's screwed up. But, this isn't his fault.
No, I think that's probably the main takeaway from this. We're not at comic book fatigue. We're at poorly written movie fatigue.
Yeah.
And that's not just with the Marvel movies. They're just the most prevalent right now because there's more of them. But, just look at everything coming out. It's either based off a book, a sequel, or both. There's hardly any big name original movies coming out.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it is. Ticket prices keep going up. Movie quality is not.
Yeah, it's got to match. How many Fast and Furious movies are we up to now? How many Mission Impossible movies are we up to now? There's a new Transformers movie coming out. Beetlejuice being a sequel is... at the time, at least, like in 88, was a completely original, weird idea. So props to the people who wrote that. Also, just to bear in mind, if you do hate something Tim Burton does, just remember, he is not necessarily an auteur. He knows how he wants something to look and be, but he is not a writer. Hardly at all. He writes some poetry, and he makes some watercolor drawings. And he has some ideas, but he is not listed as even like a story developer, screenwriter, or an author in much of any kind of way. He is a movie director, much like Ed Wood, who directed movies. Well, badly, you decide. But just to say, just when we were talking about Beetlejuice in the review, and I forgot about that, but that was an original idea. We've just seen a sequel of it some 30 years later, and it took that long to do that. Most of what we have right now is a completely prequel, sequel, transquel, everything in between, based off of something. There was, I think I mentioned Push, which I cannot remember, but I don't think it was based on anything. That one with Chris Evans.
Yeah. I could be wrong, but I don't think it was.
That was actually really good from out of nowhere. Superhero-ish, comic book-ish kind of movie that wasn't any of those things. There's a lot of properties out there that, I wish they would make a good version of, like The Shadow or The Green Hornet, stuff that dates back to the 20s and 30s. And because I want that to exist somewhere, especially for The Green Hornet, because the movie that did get made was botched from concept to release. I'm sorry, Michelle. So, I think on the horizon there's going to be some good stuff coming. I don't know. And from DC too. We talked a lot about that in our Superman episode. I'm really looking forward to that.
I think that's another thing of why we've gotten what we've been getting is no competition. The movies DC been putting out have been not necessarily a coherent unit. So
and it didn't push Marvel to have to make better and better things. They got complacent and they didn't put a lot of energy and effort into it. They just got stuff out fast and more of it because they got, I'm going to say somebody at the top got greedy. I'm not saying who it was. I don't know. But when you're putting out too much stuff and it starts getting not as good. If it would be different if they were putting out too much stuff, but it was all good. But there's too much stuff and most of it is starting to lack.
And even the things that were kind of good get swept away because you ruin it afterwards.
Yeah. or there's too much other, like, I thought Moon Knight was good. It had some weird elements to it, and they did deviate from some of the comic book. So they made an original kind of thing, which I don't think they always need to adhere specifically to, like, a comic book storyline or the comic book characters or whatever. They can do something more original, a newer version of it. And I think they did a decent job with this, and I want to see where they go from here. I don't think it's been announced yet, but they definitely set it up for, like, a major turn in the second season. But with so much coming out, like, you know, Winter Soldier, Captain America, Loki has 2 seasons, and Echo, there's gonna be Daredevil. I am looking forward to Daredevil. Huge fan of those 3 seasons of Daredevil. A lot of people still maintain that is their favorite Marvel thing.
Yeah.
Even though it is not part of the mainline MCU. And, you know, and this isn't necessarily indicative of Marvel at the time, because there was so much other stuff that came before it that people had to keep up with. But, and I don't have it in front of me, there seemed to be, like, too much TV. Then we haven't mentioned She-Hulk at all. They put out a She-Hulk show that had issues. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't know what people want CGI to look like. I'm honestly confused. Like, does it need to trick you? I don't know. People want it to look like realer than real life, and I don't know what a real life 7-foot-tall green, like, genetically engineered woman would look like. I'm just saying. People are showing it to me, and my eyesight is 20/20, and I'm looking at this thing, like 2 images. They're like, what is this? And I'm like, it doesn't look that bad to me. But that wasn't the only issue with that show. And that's just the thing. Is like,
yeah, I think if it was better written, they wouldn't have said as much about the CG.
So, yeah, there you go. And which, I'm not a huge She-Hulk fan from the comics. I did watch that. I don't think there's anything that I have skipped now. I didn't watch all of the Netflix shows, but I think I have eventually gotten to everything that they've put out since it's been, like, regular Marvel, which there's been other things like Cloak and Dagger, and I don't know what that was on, and Gifted was not part of the regular MCU. I don't think Cloak and Dagger is either. I don't have this list number, but there's just, like, too much. And again, if it were all really good, there's still just too much for people to keep up with. And the big problem is when you need to have watched Loki to watch the next movie. And not everybody's got Disney Plus. Not everybody wants to watch every show of something. It's not Game of Thrones, it's not The Sopranos or The Wire, which I hear good things about. And, you know, then they also made Inhumans, which could have been a movie that could have been better than, I'm not saying that the same people making it, but if it had been a movie and had movie money, they clearly had money issues because I think they shaved Medusa's head or something so that they just don't have to acknowledge her powers or use CGI on her in every episode because they have to have the dog there. Okay, for the record, I did not. Well, that is the one thing that I have not watched, and it's available to watch. I could watch it right now. I'm not gonna. We should finally do a commentary episode. Watch something live and comment on it in real time. Just the first episode of Inhumans to see, like, how... Did you ever watch it?
No.
Okay. Just to see how bad it really is. Because I have seen many reviews and I've seen enough clips to know.
Yeah.
But scaling back, which they've obviously done this year, I don't like the idea of canceling things, but putting that on the table of saying, what if we don't release this? Or what if we rework it and release it way later or something? These are drastic measures, drastic ideas. And one would say, like, oh, they're panicking. I think they've been panicking for a while. I think they were not acknowledging that they should have been panicking earlier than they are.
I think that's the better thing is they needed to have panicked and reworked it and didn't.
And now they are, so they're actually taking steps and measures to fixing things. And, like, taking everything off the table and taking a minute to think about it, I think is better than still just throwing spaghetti on the wall again and again and again, which is what happened after Endgame. The massive success of Endgame was, I think, to their detriment, and COVID did not help. But not having a clear vision forward. For a while, if the first thing after Endgame was an image of Kang, we would have known this is what they're gonna do, and they would have had a clear way forward. But they just started, like, hinting that the multiverse is real for 2 long. And here's the thing, I don't think they should let go of the multiverse. Like, Deadpool made a huge joke about it in Deadpool. Like, just quit. Just stop with it. If people are tired of it, it's done. No, it works if it's in the background.
Yeah.
Like, if ever once in a while, like in Doctor Who, like every so often, it's like, oh, we're in the other universe where there's doubles of everybody and some people don't exist and some people are different. Just do that. Just have it be like every once in a while, oh yeah, I forgot the multiverse is real. And then there's another version of this person. Everything has done this for like 50 years. So just do that. Don't never acknowledge it again, but don't make it be the focal point. Like, once you're done with this, we don't have to be completely done with it. It can make for some good story elements occasionally.
Yeah.
And there you go. Now they've worn it out like a dead horse, and that's exactly what they're going to do. Is once we're done with it, they're never going to mention it again, and we're never going to get any good multiverse stories out of it, there's some really good opportunities there. I think What If?
Yeah.
I forgot about What If, which was actually, I enjoyed. It was kind of like the Twilight Zone of the MCU as an animated thing. They got most of the actors back to do their voices, not everybody, but everybody who was in it did a really good job, or a really good impersonation if it wasn't the real person. But yet again, it feels like it's too many things.
It's just more things to keep up with, like what's actually part of it, what's not going to be part of it.
Yeah. And the thing with What If, I feel like if they kind of did it in such a way that it felt like, because of the Watcher, like Uatu, that it might in some bigger way actually be relevant to the real story, which if they were really going to do it, the Watcher, it should feel like it's not part of it. It should just be a Twilight Zone thing where the Watcher plays Rod Serling, introducing you to these stories as an omniscient voice and saying, what if this happened? What if Doc Ock got bit by the radioactive spider? Who knows? And then go from there. And I like seeing some of these news stories. I would also like to have seen some of the more famous comic book what ifs brought to life. I think that could be on the table, or maybe take those elements and do them with a slightly different twist. Having said all that, I'd like to see that not be canceled. Just a more occasional thing, like release a couple here and there. But I like to see things connected too, but I would also like to see some that just don't matter. Like it's just a fun thing occasionally that they'll release as a one-shot or something.
Yeah. It's just a question of, though, how do we divide the money out?
Yeah, and if they're making less and less because the movies aren't doing as well, make better things for people to keep feeding that. Anyway, hopefully they've learned their lesson, and hopefully Kevin Feige can still, and some of these have not been complete money disasters.
No.
They just haven't made $1 billion like Endgame, so which sets the bar unbelievably high that they can't reach it. Again, with like the Marvels or Ant-Man, were they really expecting that? What were the projections like for that? I think they made what they wanted to make with some of these things, but we think of them as total disasters because they weren't as good as they could have been.
Yeah. I think there's nothing to viewing them for those lenses, what we came off of versus what we're getting now. Our perspective is skewed.
My fear has always been, from the beginning, where do we go after a certain point when either these actors no longer want to do this, or when they kill the characters and we're left with like a whole line of new characters that nobody knows or cares about. And not because, people keep referring to, and I think I've mentioned this before, like Iron Man was such a, B-list character or whatever. And I'm like, he had a cartoon in the 90s. Like, people know who Iron Man. Don't pretend like nobody knew who Iron Man was. Like, no, he wasn't like Spider-Man.
Yeah,
popular.
I think that's what people were thinking. It just wasn't Spider-Man.
But when you come down to like some of what we're dealing with now, that some of which are extremely even new characters that I'm not familiar with, and I've read comics since when I was a kid. So when it comes to that, then you've got an issue that like people don't even know these like subliminally. Like you might have said like, I at least have heard of Iron Man. I don't know his backstory, but I'll go watch the movie. It looks fun. And then your Robert Downey Jr. sweeps you away. And we're just not getting that with some of the new characters because it's like, I don't even know what this is. I don't know what it's about, and I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
So hopefully they learn their lesson from that too. Maybe we can get some, I don't know where we're going from here.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those hope for the best, see where it goes.
Yeah, I feel like we ended on a low note.
Yeah.
But, X-Men is coming. I'm actually really excited to see the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
I do think it looks good. I've seen that leaked trailer. I think they released some sort of teaser, like officially.
At least some teaser photos.
Yeah, and there's the Thunderbolts, which looks like it could be pretty cool. I don't know. Like, it feels like Marvel's version of Suicide Squad, but with characters that we've set up from other films, so that there is some...
I've read some of the Thunderbolts comic books, so I'm kind of excited to see what they do with that. But yeah, what do you think? Wrap up here?
Yeah,
I think anything else will just be hours of speculation and nitpicking at this point.
Yes.
So, if you made it with us this far, thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe, tell your friends, follow us on our social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. We'll leave links in the description below. And until next time, see ya.